happy to be here today, and I'm going to invite up Becca Chefran, also, the side with no stairs. And Becca is here because we have, she has a sister project that we want to tell you about. And this is really birthed out of seeing the Jesus Revolution movie. And I know, Ethel, you had some questions. So I am here to share with Ethel about this project and to share with you. And we also want to hear Ethel's story. So, Ethel?
Well, first of all, I've been hearing about this farm animal that smiles. And I don't know if I've ever seen a farm animal smile. Oh yes, it's a smiling sheep. What in the world is a smiling sheep, pray tell?
Some would say it's a bad name.
Oy vey.
So the smiling sheep is my moniker that is the house for all things that I do, which is public speaking or writing devotionals. But the biggest thing that I have going on is this project, which is called They Called Him Yeshua. And you're going to see some of these around. If you scan the QR code, you can find out more about this project and even how you can donate to this project.
Wonderful. How did you come up with the name of everything that you do? Smiling sheep?
Why the smiling sheep?
Yes.
I'll tell you that in brief.
All right.
In 1995, I was working at Beth Yeshua Messianic Synagogue in Philadelphia as the janitor, scrubbing the walls, listening to Keith Green.
Mr. Clean.
Mr. Clean. Listening to Keith Green and just asking God how Becca actually was on the other side of the world in Odessa, Ukraine at that time, along with some other friends of ours, and I was praying fervently for them. But part of my prayer was not only God use them, create divine appointments for them, but God use me, hineni. And he spoke to me, and I don't say that lightly, and I don't say that that happens often, but he spoke to me and he said, how many homeless people do you see? I was living in Philadelphia at the time. And it just opened my eyes to the fact that everywhere you go in Philadelphia, there are homeless people, and they are in need not only of physical support, but also of just the Lord and encouragement. And so I was listening to Keith Green, his retelling of the parable of the sheep and the goats from Matthew 25, verses 31 to 46.
And you were inspired.
And I was inspired, and I said, Keith Green says at the end of that, the only difference between the sheep and the goats is what they did and didn't do. And I decided at that moment, I'm going to strive to be a sheep and to hear him say at the end of my life, well done, good and faithful servant. So
Wonderful.
That's where the smiling sheep came from.
Wonderful. Well, I know you want to interview me, but before you do that, I want to know a little bit briefly about Stones of Witness, because it's a new term to me, and Becca is going to tell us now all about Stones of Witness.
Okay, thank you. This is a very exciting thing that I believe the Lord has placed in my heart, and as you'll hear soon with Marc, something very similar in his heart, separately without us even knowing. But about a year and a half ago at this point, a very dear friend of mine had passed away in Israel, and I wasn't able to be near her. And to make a long story short, my heart was like, this is a phenomenal woman, an older woman who had an incredible history, and the Lord did so much and used her in so many ways. I said, if only I had taken the time to interview her and get her story so that her legacy would continue and so that other women would be blessed the way I was blessed by her in my life. And then as soon as I started doing that thought came to mind, I began thinking about the Messianic movement from a similar perspective. And I said, you know, we're a young movement. I mean, we're 2,000 years old, but we're also 50 years old. And we have many leaders. Some have gone on to be with the Lord, but many are still here who are founders, pioneers in this movement. And we need to get their stories. And it felt very important. It pressed on my heart that we are to document. You know, I mean, I know there's lots of music, there's books and all this, but I come from a media background with television and I felt like it's time to do a documentary series, in fact. Stones of Witness comes from in the Old Testament when the Israelites crossed over the Jordan into the Promised Land. The Lord said to them, take a stone from the water for each tribe, 12 stones in total, and it's to be a memorial, placed on this in the Promised Land as a memorial to remind us for generations to come of what the Lord has done. And so that's very much what I want to do. Each person that we interview will be a stone, and together we gather them. It will be stones of witness to remind us of what the Lord has done as he has brought back the Messianic movement and all his prophecy and all the things that are happening. So that's what's happening.
That's a sister project to They Called Him Yeshua, which is the project that I've started documenting leaders that came to faith and or began their ministries in the 60s and 70s during or coming out of the Yeshua revolution. And that's where we brought you on today, Ethel. You are a legend in Messianic broadcasting, having Bagels and Blessings for almost 26 years, I believe.
I'm amazed. Correct? Yes.
Yeah.
Incredible.
So I would like to trumpet, if you will, your testimony.
I thought angels used harps,
so
but I
many
guess
good
they use
outtakes.
shofars.
Ethel,
Shofar, so good.
Shofar, so good. Ethel, tell us exactly how you came to become a believer.
So what you're really asking me is, what's a nice Jewish girl like me doing in a place like this? Well, how long do we have? How many hours?
Depends on how many fire alarms we have.
Okay. Well, basically, I grew up in a Jewish home where we were holiday Jews. We went to synagogue for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. My parents sent me to Hebrew school for 5 years. My mama taught me to pray Psalm 23 when I was afraid of thunderstorms, but we didn't talk about God very much, and Jesus never came into the picture. But I remember riding my bicycle one day, looking at trees on both sides of the road, and one tree was taller than the rest. And all of a sudden, this thought came into my mind. Oh, that taller tree is like Jesus overlooking his disciples. They went, oh, ew, where did that come from? I mean, a nice Jewish girl, I never heard about him, I don't talk about him. That was strange. And, I had friends that weren't Jewish, and my mama always said, can't you find any Jewish friends? I said, Mama, please. My best friend was Catholic. I thought that would be a cool thing to, have confession someday. It sounded nice. And fast forward to, I was always interested in astrology, numerology. I was like seeking, so drawn to mysteries of life. And I remember singing hymns and Christmas carols in school, thinking, oh, they're so pretty, I like those. And then I was from Richmond, Virginia. I was part of the Richmond Symphony Chorus, and we sang Handel's Messiah. For unto us a son is born, child is born, whatever the words are. I had no idea. It was like over my head. And then I graduated high school, and there were 12 of us that received a special citation from the principal. And I remember there was a pastor there. He had done the opening prayers. He came around to each one of us and shook our hands. And he comes to me, he looks me in the eyes, and says, you will do great and mighty things for our Lord. And I'm like, I'm thinking in my mind, please just go to the next person. It was freaky. Okay, so now I'm studying music education and voice. The 1 year I was in college. We'll get to why I quit. And the president of the music club, him and his wife invited me to a meeting where people were sharing their testimonies. That was freaky and weird. I didn't like that. Then they gave me this tract, and I stuffed it into my backpack, got home, took it out. I'm looking at it on the bunk bed, and it says, Jews for Jesus. Threw it in the trash can. Little seeds being planted, but I wasn't ready yet. So I'll make this quick because there's so much to tell. That year, a fellow music student said, Ethel, I have a cousin in the Navy. He wants to write to a nice Jewish girl. I thought, oh, sailor. I wrote for several months to a man, and we became really close friends, and then we became, eventually we became engaged and got married. I didn't know him very well. He was from a Jewish background that was even less observant than mine. And, I can't say that it was a horrible thing to happen that we married, because we had 3 wonderful children who are the pride and joy of my life. But we were married for almost 12 years, and I tried really hard to please him. I eventually we moved to Rochester, New York, and a girl came to sit right next to me at Kodak. And, my husband at the time, we argued. I had no peace. And there's this lady, Doreen, at Kodak with her picture of Yeshua on her desk, quietly praying during lunch. And I find I'm always drawn to people who are calm, because maybe you've noticed I'm a little hyper. I don't know if it shows, but so Doreen began to gently share with me little snippets here and there. And I don't even remember her exact words, but something she said got me curious. So I opened up that forbidden book, because Jews are not going to look at a New Testament. We're convinced that it's anti-Semitic, right? By the way, this was around 1976, when I was 22. Yeah, go ahead and do the math. So I remember opening the New Testament and seeing the genealogy right there on the first page. My goodness, they're mentioning King David. And I'm thumbing through, and then I'm looking at the Beatitudes. I'm like, whoa, there's nothing anti-Semitic here. His words are beautiful, they're life-giving. And then somebody told me, maybe it was because I met some other Jewish believers, I found out the disciples were Jewish. The Last Supper was a Passover Seder. And here's the clincher. Yeshua said in Matthew 5:17, I came to fulfill the law and the prophets, not to change it. Whoa! The New Testament was a Jewish book. And so this lady, Doreen, that had shown me these things, she told me what to do to be saved. But here's the weird thing. I don't remember ever asking her that. I think I asked her something else. Each time she said, oh, well, you need to say the prayer and invite him into your heart. So that was in my head. So there was one day, after another argument with my ex, because he became my ex, I remember, going upstairs in my house to my place of refuge, the bathroom. Sorry, Mama. She said, you don't ever mention God's name in the bathroom. It's sacrilegious. I'm sorry. I remember standing there at the mirror, and I said the J word. The J word. I mean, it was hard to even say Jesus. So it was July 2nd, which, by the way, was 2 days ago. July 2nd, 1976, and I invited him in, Yeshua, into my heart. But right away, I'm thinking, what have I done? Did I just convert to another religion? Am I still a Jew? I began to meet other Jewish believers in the Rochester area, and eventually my ex did not appreciate my having come to the Lord, and we had 3 kids, and we were married for 12 years, and it didn't work out, and God was with me that whole time, and eventually I ended up in Rochester, New York, and before that, Buffalo, Frank Lawrence's congregation, where I met Daniel Chadwick. He fell in love with my children, then with me, and we married, and it's been great. And then Bagels and Blessings just fell into my lap.
So tell me about your early experiences with the Messianic movement.
Wow.
Why did you turn to Messianic Judaism and not just absorb into the church?
I was proud of my heritage. That's a great question, Marc. I was proud of my heritage. I was attracted to the Jewish flavor. I remember the first time I ever went to Brit Hadashah in Buffalo. I loved the worship. I loved the Jewishness of it. I didn't want to just become assimilated. I'm proud to be a Jew. I was born a Jew. I'll die a Jew. Do you know what I mean?
There's a good book by that name, actually.
Yes. So that's a really great question.
I guess one thing that really has been the impetus for this project for me is that there were pioneers that took us from Hebrew Christianity to Messianic Judaism and to the identity that we have today. What do you think it was about that pioneer spirit that may be lacking today, we may need for the future of our movement?
That's a really good question. I'm not sure I have an answer. We just need to remember who we are. We're daughters and sons of the Most High God, but we are Jewish, and we need to make sure that we are sharing our Jewish heritage with our family, that we are still observing our holidays, and that we are keeping our liturgy, our Jewish prayers, and not letting the Hebrew language die. And man, you're talking about the early days. I remember Lamb and Israel's Hope, the first Messianic groups I ever heard. And I'm sure you can relate, but it's like when I walked in the door and I heard that early Messianic music, it was like, I'm home. I am home. They captured the Jewish flavor, and I love the Jewish flavor, and I don't want to ever lose that.
Thank you, Ethel.
You're welcome.
I don't know, with the fire alarm, we may have a few more minutes, but I wanted to share with you the experience of hearing the testimonies of those that have come to faith, whose lives were changed, and now with Bagels and Blessings are changing lives. You've had the opportunity to interview so many and share the stories of so many. Scripture says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, right? So, one last question, Ethel. What do you think is the power of testimony? And tell us a little bit about this book that you've just written.
I'm sorry. This is just coming out Thursday night at the book signing, and I'll have a table Thursday through Saturday, but I'm so excited. The Lord gave me the opportunity to write for Eric Kokinger's Messianic Daily News website, and he said you can write about anything you want. This was years ago, and I chose to write about relationships. And so these chapters evolved from those articles I wrote, and it's all about how you can't love another person unless you love yourself, and it's about not giving into pride and what to do when you disagree, and things to look for in a mate, things to avoid when you are looking for a mate, and just how to be godly in your relationship. So I'm very excited that God has opened the door for me to write this.
Yeah, we're excited about that.
Thank you.
Tell me about these testimonies and what you think they mean to our community. Bagels and Blessings. Why do you do Bagels and Blessings?
I love that question. And by the way, I interview so many people. It's rare that I'm interviewed, so I'm loving this. My first thought when I was given an opportunity to do a one-time, one-hour show, my first thought was, can I play Messianic music on the air? And he says, of course, the hour is yours. Do whatever you want. Initially, it was to share Messianic music with the world. But my motto became to share the Jewishness of the gospel with the world. And I'm excited. I mean, I'm on the air in Rochester, New York, but it's live streamed. And then I have podcasts, so thank God it's going all over the world. I'm excited to share that it's a very Jewish thing to believe in a Jewish Messiah. And there are people that still have never heard Messianic music. So I can share with them Paul Wilbur's music, McKedem, Marty Getz. They've never heard some of this stuff. So I'm so excited that God has given me this wonderful opportunity for all these years.
Well, thank you, Ethel and Becca. I'm very excited to partner with you with Stones of Witness. If you want to learn how you can support these projects, They Called Him Yeshua and Stones of Witness, you will see these, I don't know where mine is, but the little information cards. Look for the smiling sheep.
On the back table, there's a few.
On the back table, there's a few. Click the QR code. There it is. There's the smiling sheep. Look for these information cards and help us to bring the stories of our pioneers to life and share that pioneering spirit with the Messianic leaders that are present and are to come. Thank you so much for having us with you today.
Shalom.